I like how Marlee, Rich, and I are existing in nothing, like just blank space. And Ed's putting as much character as he can in his set behind him.
Go Gators.
Go
Gators, Emmys. I left my Emmys at home. This is the problem. Like,
Yeah.
I should have had them there.
Welcome to the show, where air takes the flow. Lee and Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the guy who definitely would be carrying the group projects through my college classes, Rich Swire. How are you doing, man?
Doing great.
You've brought the hat back.
Yeah, it's for the guest.
Yeah, you dressed up. Is that you brought your tattered hat up for the guests? I like it.
I'm ready to go duck hunting.
Well, I like it, man. We actually have two guests joining us today. Our first, Ed Buckley, is a serial entrepreneur with successful exits at both Peloton and FitOn, now leading development at Sword Health while serving as Scholars Chairman. We also have Marlee Strawn, who is a former teacher and founding principal with nearly 2 decades in education. She's been recognized as a Women in AI Fellow, and her TEDx Talks highlights the future of learning in the age of AI. Together, they're building Scholar Education, an AI-powered platform already helping thousands of teachers reduce workload and personalize learning for students. Ed and Marlee, welcome to the pod. I did all that one breath, which is really, that it caught me at the end there.
Yeah.
But
I'm
God.
glad that Rich wore the hat because I was 2 seconds away from wearing my Bruce and Baxter hat today.
Ooh.
Oh, there you go.
And I was like, you know what? I don't want to dress down the podcast, so I'll go hatless. But
there's
we
no
could've
way you
matched.
could dress it down. We're at the bottom of the dress measurement tool.
There you go.
I think 75% of our episodes were wearing a black shirt too, which, you know, I'm sure any designer for the podcast and our producer is like, why are they black on
We're
black?
just like floating heads. Yep.
Just existing.
I love it.
You're like an album cover, though. It's
Yeah,
great. The black
that's right.
shirts with the black behind you.
Yeah,
It's an
like
album
a boy
cover.
band. It's like
Yeah.
a really sad boy band. I think that's the vibe I'm going for.
You're too short, right? You got to have at least 4 in the boy band.
That's
so.
true. Well, we're working on it. We're working on it, Ed. You could be you could be number 3.
Time, commitments, stress, life. I don't know. Sorry.
He's like, I don't have time for this.
right.
You know, that's a safe bet.
Maybe next week.
Yeah,
Maybe.
exactly. Well, I appreciate you both coming on. Obviously, the way that we connected was kind of unique. We've done a couple episodes around the education space, both just speaking on it from our own experiences in education. We also had a guest on that was a professor at USF talking about how they're applying it. And when we connected us 3 here and brought Rich into the conversation too, I just felt like what you're building at Scholar really aligns with some of the different discussions we had. So I'd love to jump right into it. If you'd like to take a moment just to make sure I hit all the accolades that you had or anything else you want to bring out, and then we can talk a little bit about the origin story with Scholar.
Yeah, thank you for the accolades. Essentially, if I can talk about AI, I feel like anybody can. I have no engineering background. I'm not technical whatsoever. I was actually the principal of the high school that I founded, where my teachers came to me saying, "Oh no, the kids are cheating," and I was like, "Why is this shocking? They always cheat."
Been doing it for years.
But exactly, but they said, "You don't understand. They're using something called ChatGPT, and it's a tool that created an entire essay for them." And that actually started my first journey of, starting my first account and learning what generative AI was. And at first being a little disappointed, not really understanding the hype, and then doing research and understanding that there's a method, with prompt engineering that really dictates the output. And that's how I got started in the space, just by researching and just being addicted to what the potential was. And then, Ed and I, we were acquaintances. Essentially, we share a really good friend, and we were just very organically talking about the future of education. We were talking about not only AI, but also in Florida, a lot of things were changing regarding parent choice and school vouchers and things like that. And really, that's how Scholar Education was born, is through what does the future of education look like? And that we were in a pivotal moment in time that we felt like we could really create something that would really change the trajectory of what education looks like. And that's how it was born.
Great. What about you, Ed?
Well, I come about life at this moment from a completely different place than Marlee, which is actually why we're such a successful duo.
Yeah.
I am not from the education space, although I did spend a lot of money and time going to school. My helmet behind me went to Florida 3 times. I serial entrepreneur, as you said. So I've sold a company to Peloton. 2 years later, had another exit to FitOn, which is the number one fitness app in the space, probably 25 million members now. And have spent all my time really always looking at how can we use technology to help people be the best versions of themselves, and generally was health related. And as Marlee said, I would have never touched education with a 10-foot pole, except Florida is going to school choice, going to school vouchers. There's this cool new thing, AI. And it was obvious that the world was going to change and that opportunity was going to be there. And so as I looked at this, it was, wow, you can actually make meaningful change in schools, whereas before, like, gravity would stop that from happening. Yeah. And I knew that I certainly would not be able to do it through brute force, like maybe you can in some consumer-based industries. And so Marlee and I teamed up. Our mutual friend is funny. Her birthday splits ours. So it's Marlee's birthday, mine's in 2 weeks, and our mutual friends is right in the middle of our birthdays. So it's kind of a funny time, and we're recording.
There you go.
During that time period. And so Marlee really undersells herself, right? She helped found the most successful school here, and I think we're in the 7th or 8th largest district in America. Founded that, stood it up, ran it for 4 years, still remains on the board. And those lessons that she learned, not just being a teacher, not just being a principal, but being a founding one, is really just shows off her amazing curiosity. And so when you put our two skill sets together, it's really been a great dynamic duo of content and subject matter expertise. And quite the opposite, which is I have very little subject matter expertise on this particular topic, but great expertise in building, scaling, and, having growth mindset for when it comes to tech companies.
So how do you guys think, education is like one of those areas where it's just like the big elephant, right? Like healthcare, education. It's always this mammoth that nobody seems to really understand how to manipulate or move. And to your point, Ed, is in the kind of the free markets, typically somebody invents something new and then everybody migrates to that new thing. And it's really just about, kind of converting from an old thing to a new thing. And very rarely do you have to change from within, especially with innovation. You don't see the big companies really coming to bat with something really new. But in education, you kind of already have that infrastructure that you have to live within, right? You have to kind of be in this beast, if you will. Like, so how do you attack it? Are you kind of attacking it from a specific angle, a specific use case, or a role within the education, or are you kind of taking more of a holistic view and then kind of biting it, eating the elephant one piece at a time, or is there a specific strategy you guys are taking? Because I realize education is just like this very dynamic, not just organization, but just ecosystem.
So Rich, I'll start the answer and I'll have Marlee do the second half, which is on the specific education attack vector. Yeah, we have a great, really, we think one that a lot of people have ignored, or it's been under innovated, and it kind of came to us as we were out doing the pilot. But regardless of that content, the go-to-market strategy was one that we came up with after talking to a number of exited edtech founders. Whenever I start a new company, I try to talk to as many people as possible, which is how Marlee and I ultimately connected on this, because I was just talking to friends, parents, friends, founders, whatever.
Right.
And when I got to the founders, I asked them, what do you wish you had done at the beginning that you didn't learn till the end? And I kept hearing the same advice from a go-to-market perspective. But it would require someone to do that to have either time, reputation, leverage, or something that a lot of early stage founders don't. Well, when you're someone who's already exited and you've made a bit of a reputation, you can shortcut a lot of things that you can if you're a first time, founder. So we took the strategy of how do you go as high up on the leverage distribution chain as possible, i.e. the government funds most schools. Don't go school to school to school, right? You're trying to figure out how you can go from the very top. Now, that doesn't always mean federally, because as we all know, schools by and large is a state issue. So looking at state and federal strategies and having the right champions and funding mechanisms is what we tried to do from moment one, right? And we essentially self-funded the first pilot so that we could build what the teachers and students wanted rather than us just guessing what they wanted, right? So while we were having those conversations, which we all know take 12 to 18 months when you're working with the government, we were out in the field. And that's where we figured out, once again, what was that value prop vector that we were going to try to double and triple down on. And so, Marlee, why don't you talk to about what we figured out in that, funded by us, on the first unfunded, pilot, and what was so meaningful and what we're still doing today?
Yeah, I think something that I'm really proud of is everything that we have built to date has been co-designed with the teachers and the students. So everything has been based on feedback. And we knew that was going to be really important because we knew that AI could potentially be scary to a lot of educators, and it still is, to be honest. We're still early days. So that being said, we quickly launched, a beta product with what we, kind of saw as the immediate value add, which was BaxterBot, which is a student tutor that can be trained on the lesson plan for that day and then be an on-the-spot support system for the student. But it was through that beta pilot where the teacher started to ask some really great questions about supporting some of the most vulnerable students that she is having a hard time with knowing how to, the time to plan lessons to meet all the needs, but also not necessarily having the skill set to meet all the needs of the students. So she started asking really great questions like, can BaxterBot translate into Spanish for the students that I don't speak Spanish to support? Absolutely. Yeah. So fast forward to today, BaxterBot can dual translate into 179 different languages for every lesson plan that the teacher creates. Okay. Next question was, what about special education students? Are we able to use BaxterBot to support the students who might be a couple grade levels below? Or, they are completely nonverbal autistic students and they never ask a question. So we started to get these really great questions, which has led us to where we feel makes us, a really valuable tool for teachers, which is tackling all of the different learning needs of students in the classroom. And we do that with really personalization of BaxterBot. So we'll take their learning profile, and BaxterBot knows that he's talking to a fourth grader that's at a second grade reading level, or he knows that he's talking to a student who is, on the autistic spectrum, and what accommodations are tied to that student's needs. So that's where we've, evolved over time, where, there's compliance around, special education that is time consuming often for teachers to keep up with. But there's also a lot of value with supporting these students in ways that we've never been able to before.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think as you guys were touching on with different industries, sometimes when new tech comes in, there's always an initial skepticism, right? Like, let's kind of see what's happening here. And as we already knew, it kind of had a bad taste in the mouth in education because of how people were leveraging it. But the minute they probably saw the impact, even just on a small scale, everyone kind of puts that guard down and says, like, how else can we be using this in other ways? And I think that's an accelerant that you don't normally get in maybe some direct consumer verticals that tech would break into.
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying, when your value exceeds your problems, people will use you, right? People will work with you. And to that point, ChatGPT came in from the side of, my students are using it. I am not getting value out of it as a teacher. So the adoption curve didn't really start when the students started using it. It wasn't until the teachers started leveraging it and realized, lesson plan writing, managing the accommodation, managing languages, getting insights, right? That's really when the adoption curve started, not the pre-setup, which was kids were the true early adopters. And like, hey, we've been cheating for hundreds of years, dozens of years. This is just the newest way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. And so when you're talking about, kind of getting the students, using, Baxter as a kind of a co-pilot, as a, kind of a tutor, as you mentioned, what is kind of the setup? Is it something that they just have access to at any point in time? Maybe do they interact with it more out of class, or are you starting to see it kind of integrate into class? I mean, what is like the general usage that you guys are envisioning for this, as far as, and how much of that is kind of complementing maybe in class work versus out of homework versus what having the teacher engaging? I mean, how much of that personalization is trickling into the actual day-to-day of the student, or maybe not today, but like, what's your vision as far as how that's going to get implemented?
Because I'm sure the educator doesn't want to lose control of it, right? Like the point here is not necessarily to say, well, the educator is somewhat obsolete, but it needs to be a tool that kind of goes both ways, I think.
Yeah. And so if you look at Ed's shirt, he's got 2 dogs. So we talked about Baxter.
Oh, I didn't even notice it there with the Emmy and the helmet. Oh, man.
I know. It's so much. I was going to say, notice there's 2 dogs, not one.
Yeah, there's two. So,
right? Yeah.
BaxterBot is the student-facing AI, but on the teacher-facing AI is Pawfessor Bruce. So what we do from the teacher perspective is we help with the lesson plan generation. We provide a ton of actionable insights based on the student's performance as well, so they can know exactly what steps to take and meet each student's needs. But everything's dictated by the teacher. So the teacher starts the whole process. They can use Pawfessor Bruce to create their lesson plans or upload their existing lesson plans, because let's be honest, some teachers have been doing this for 20 years. So they start there. And then once they either use our AI lesson planner or upload their own, that's what trains BaxterBot to provide that context and the guardrails to keep the students on track. So then we use the lesson plan context along with their learning profile to provide that personalization for every lesson plan. And then everything that's happening in the student portal is fed back to the teacher portal for the data insights. So based on today's BaxterBot conversations, where were the gaps? Based on any formative assessment data, how can you support them tomorrow in your next lesson plan? So it's a cycle that all starts with the teacher first.
That's great. Yeah. And what's the like vision from, maybe not necessarily have to tell us your vision for the product if you don't want to let the world know that, but like, what's your vision as far as education goes? How do you see, now that you've been on feet on the street and talking to teachers and seeing people interact with your product, like what does a classroom look like in, I wouldn't even say 3 to 5 years would be a long time to look out, but where do you see kind of AI, I guess fundamentally transforming? Because it sounds like you're working very well within the current ecosystem and you're optimizing time, right? You're compressing time, which is a lot of the use cases that we see with AI. You're not really changing anything per se. You're still anchoring around
making it more efficient.
The proven methodologies and the coursework, but you're making, way more efficient, way more personalized, and you're compressing time, right? It takes 2 seconds now to generate or to customize a lesson plan versus somebody have to write it. Or maybe it was impossible because you can't customize a lesson plan or a lesson to 30, 40, 50 students. There's just not enough time in the day, but AI could take your core and spin it out, right? But then how does that kind of translate into, where teachers and students and the entire interaction kind of evolves? Because obviously the AI is going to get, obviously continue to have bigger and better and more application in everybody's day-to-day life, right? So we haven't even hit that part of it where it's become kind of a common application, or the most popular application that people use. Certainly it is the most popular one people download, but when they start defaulting to ChatGPT instead of Google, and they start to talk to their ChatGPT agent because iPhone has it fully integrated, like as it becomes more and more kind of part of the day-to-day life, like how do you think it's going to make the classroom change?
So I think whenever you look at innovation, almost agnostic of industry, you watch a handful of things happen. The first is taking the existing processes and digitizing them. Once processes are digitized, then you can automate and expedite them, right? And that's kind of the stage we're at. So a lot of teaching was essentially done in real life, meaning comments and everything were essentially non-digitized. Sure, there's point solutions that are out there, but the end-to-end process wasn't. I think what we see ourselves doing is being a floating bridge from the past to the future. If you look at where classrooms will be, to your point, I think Richie said like 3 to 5 years, a long time. I think classrooms 5 years from now will look insanely different. But you can't jump from the last 50 years, which looks the same, to 5 years from now. I think almost every year will be its own unique iterative cycle to get us there.
Yeah.
And so even if you look at our product and our service and our approach, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and today, we've had a lot of cycles. So I think what we're trying to do here is to tell the schools, if you look at every single year, we have helped take what you're doing and advance you on that stair-step process that's going to happen in a non-scary but very trustworthy way, right? So I think regardless of whatever those stops are along the stair-step, to say, we're going to get you there. You can trust us, and we're not going to leave people behind who aren't speaking English, that have accommodations or are gifted and need, other end of the bell curve. So I think that's really the value prop here that we see is that our product will not be stagnant, nor will we, and we're going to help get you there. And they can trust us just like these cute, adorable puppies, give them a warm feeling. But I think, what you think about is digitizing that process, check. Start to automate things, check. And now start to look at, because things are digitized that weren't before, once again, Rich, I think you said this, it's like, now we can start to do new things for you that weren't possible, right? The first thing that we had to do was bring everything online. And once that occurs, new insights, new actions, and new capabilities become available. And once those capabilities become available, now you can re-strategize how you're approaching education, which then opens up kind of the downstream butterfly effect. So I think it's going to be, in a good way, a tumultuous next few years. But I think, once again, that's why we're here, is to say, trust us, let's hold hands. We're going to bring you there, and we're going to do it in a really digestible way that's not going to give you too much, heartburn.
Yeah. One of the reasons that we probably haven't seen the classroom change in so long is that whatever takes place during the school year is, like you said, not documented. So everything is kind of being put at the starting line and says, this is what you have. And then you move through to the end, and then it all kind of just starts over and just repeats the process. So there has not been a lot of ability to disrupt or ideate on top of a process, because it's just a machine. It's a factory, right? It just goes one way. Now with the introduction of AI and being able to, maybe not ambient listening being a part of it in this case, but being able to take all of those interactions that normally wouldn't be documented and coming to a source of truth and being able to use them. I do agree with you, Ed, that the classroom every year will change significantly in different ways, to where 5 years from now, people will probably look at it saying, like, how did we not do any of this sooner?
This is a debate Marlee and I have regularly. And so we can do it right here in front of you. And it's not a debate that we disagree on. It's like, we're usually on the same side, but we keep flip-flopping. Okay. So I was totally wrong on the following thing. Okay. I thought on like the healthcare side, people would violently oppose voice scribes in the healthcare setting. And I have seen from my other position that I have, it's not as violent as an opposition as I thought. And so we always thought, like, how soon do we try to move ambient listening into the classroom? Because to me, whenever that unlocks, that is when it actually changes everything. And Marlee knows the classroom far better than I'm like, will they ever accept it? Why would we even want to do that? And she was the first, like, maybe this is going to happen. And so we go back and forth on, like, when's the right time to introduce it? Because going back to my previous statement, if your value exceeds your problems, people will adopt you. It's like, if you can get a handful of early adopter teachers to do it and show how much it transforms their process and uses things up, it could be transformative. Marlee, what side of the debate are you on today as we record
Poke holes
this?
in it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, I have a 6-year-old, so I actually think about this a lot, about the future and what his, school journey is going to look like. And I was just talking about this with our engineering team. So I'm going to use this analogy that I just said to them. Imagine graduating high school, and since kindergarten, you had a BaxterBot that stayed with you over time, your entire career of school, knew every lesson that you had been taught, knew every assessment that you had ever taken, and over time is evolving and supporting you in different ways. That's if I had to go really futuristic, that's where I feel like AI could truly make game-changing change. But that being said, to this whole, would teachers feel comfortable with that, I think, is the question, right? I think there are teachers who are futuristic enough to welcome the ability to get to be listened to and then get insights, right? I think there are teachers out there who would bring value out of that. I think there are teachers who are hesitant. They're the ones that are hesitant in general about technology before AI. So that's you're going to have that spectrum. But I feel like, my true vision of where I feel like that could be game changing for education is that memory over time, and not starting every school year with a new teacher who doesn't know you, right? Having this consistency across your education career, I think, is really what we're trying to build, at least.
Yeah. I mean, it's a debate that is not just in education, but it's a challenge for, I think, everybody, including, kind of the core providers of AI, is, where ownership lies. And that's really what it's about, is, because when you're talking about ownership of like my data, in the sense of what you're talking about is the child going from K to 12, essentially they're the owner of all that information, right? I mean, if you were just to default to somebody, because they're the only person that's actually been contributing to that data in a majority manner over that period of time. They might switch teachers, switch schools. They might even, not be in school anymore, but they want to maintain that data. That's where like a lot of the debate is that, and how they want to authorize or how they want other people to be able to use that data, right? Even though it might be collected, whether it be through Ambient or whether through conversation with ChatGPT or the model or Baxter, or whether it be, grabbed from some other sources. And that kind of, that escalates to the grand debate, which is probably hitting, the Supreme Court soon, which is the copyright, right? And training the models. And inference is one element of the picture, but then actually how all these models are being built. So when it comes down to it, I think there's probably a lot of debate and discussion about, it's less about, I do agree that there's probably some uncomfortableness and privacy and things like that. But the reality is, if a kid is talking out loud in class, it's not really private, in the sense of like other people are hearing it, but whether it can be used and how it can be used in some sort of AI, memory in this case, is going to be like a really interesting debate. It's the same debate people are having with, like, in the corporate world, and this probably happens in the government and education world, is, now you go onto a Zoom call or a GoToMeeting, and there's like five AI agents are like attending the call, and so the assumption is like, okay, like everybody's kind of cool with it because everybody's kind of maybe like, oh, maybe I'll benefit from the notes of this meeting. And it is, I wouldn't call it public, but it's pseudo public in the sense that it's not just me. There's like 5 people. However, I've never been on one, but I'm sure there's meetings where it's like the person says, hey, turn off that AI, right? But what they kind of are understanding, and really what probably understand, is that even without that AI attending, these meetings are being recorded. They're probably ending up in some sort of, video file. So somebody has access to this thing anyway. I mean, we're kind of entering into this new world, not to get too obtuse, but where it's like, you just assume that you're going to get recorded no matter what, right? In any scenario or in any world, right? Like you just have to kind of go into a situation knowing I'm probably going to be either somebody's taking a picture from far away and I'm in the background, or I'm on a meeting and it's being recorded. So there's this cultural, I think, barrier that I think is one of the reasons why AI adoption is going to take longer than people think. And I think in the classroom is probably extraordinarily a sensitive area. There's probably other sensitive areas. As you mentioned, Ed, the doctor's office to me is an interesting one. We do a lot of healthcare, and the ambient listening there is like in high demand, mostly from the providers. But like, yeah, my mom actually texted me the other day and was like, because she knows I run an AI business. She's like, I can't believe I just went to the doctor and they asked my permission if I could use AI to record the thing. And she's just like, yeah. And I think people just don't understand what that means. Like, why are you asking me if an AI can do it when you don't really ask me if a person can do it? Because in a weird way, it's actually, I don't think they've made the correlation that AI is actually less private. But in a weird way, when you're there in the scenario, it actually is more private because it's just you and the doctor. Anyway, I think it's a bigger question even that goes beyond the classroom. But I think you are right, Marlee, in the sense of like, it's going to happen. It's like you can't really fight it, but it will take longer for people to get used to the benefit of having AI present in the room at all times. I think ambient listening is probably going to be the biggest like driver of AI innovation over the next few years, because we've kind of run out of information to train these models on. And when you really get down to it, like the real nitty gritty value of what AI can bring into your life is it has to be there and it has to know what's going on. And it has to, like, it has to be listening to me in order for it to really, truly help me if it wants to be my personal assistant, it has to be listening to me. Right. And so, I think that's kind of like the bridge that we have to cross, but it's going to happen,
Yeah. Were you guys one of the nerds that asked your professors if you could record them, or is that just me? Am I the only one? I mean, it's very similar to that, in my opinion. Like, I wanted the recordings of those so I could go back and review them and make sure I had, all the resources I need. So I think
there's a famous movie where, isn't there a movie? I don't know if it was Real Genius. I think it was Real Genius, where they showed the first day of class and there's like a handful of kids, and then the next day it was like maybe a half full of kids and then some recorder, like old school, like recording devices, not like
the tape deck.
Yeah. And then by the by the third week of class, the professor was literally talking into a auditorium full of tape decks. And that's exactly right. I think that is exactly the same trend line. It's like, and people would argue like, oh man, that's a shame that they're using technology, even though it was a tape deck, to miss out on that experience. But then the hard argument to be had there is like, the professor maybe didn't offer enough to warrant them to be there. Maybe he was just delivering it, in a way that they're like, I'll just record it and listen to it later. And that's kind of the world we're in today, is like the efficiencies are starting to push out the delivery systems that we've kind of grown with over the last 50, 60 years.
The norms and the status quo there. What do you got, Ed? I feel like you
I've
call the nerd just like we did.
Well, I am a nerd. Look at the top. I've got a bunch of Iron Man gauntlets up there. So
that's not that.
We'll all start a separate podcast called Four Nerds.
That's not that nerdy. That's not
okay,
that nerdy.
I have a handful of things. And Rich, I'm going to disagree with you on a handful of things. So I too thought no one is ever going to allow these note-taking apps to happen in Zoom. In my world, I do 12 to 18 meetings a day, and almost every single one of them are on Zoom. Okay, so like the bandwidth that I see is high. I would say 3/4 of them have note taker apps. And I remember when they first were really rolling out, let's call it 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I told my staff, I don't ever want to be in a meeting with one of those. Take your own effing notes. I don't want to be recorded and don't have those notes on them, right?
Yeah.
And so I was a super opposed person to that. And I was shocked to see literally in a year, they're everywhere. Everyone allows them. And I thought, man, I can't wait to see how many conversations have them and then be like, we need to pause it because we're going to talk about something sensitive. People blow right through it and I'll talk about sensitive things in work meetings. I will tell you, I can count on one hand out of 18 meetings a day, 2 years, how many times people have said, no, can you turn that off?
Oh, okay? No, that's what I'm saying. I said, no, I think we're in agreement. That's what I'm saying. I'm shocked.
Okay. Shocked. And so I think it's going to be much quicker in education.
Yeah. I would say to your point though on that, Ed, I think the caveat in education is the fact that the majority of users, let's say, of that ambient listening are not able to consent directly. So like that is where there might be the legislation piece that we see.
You have to have, once again, the value outweighing it. And there's 3 stakeholders. 100%. There's the student, the teacher / administration, and parents, right? Well, if all of a sudden the parents are like, I think I'm not trying to get controversial from a political stance, but if you recall, the body cam push on police were opposed by the police originally because they're like, no, oversight, constant oversight, micromanagement. Then after the police who had them used that footage to clear them in false accusations, it was the opposite. Now the police wanted them all the time because they're like, hey, I'm going to use this to clear my name. So I think what you're going to see is like pushback, massive adoption where you've got some teachers who are using it because they're early adopters. They grew up, they're a few years younger than us. They use them in their training in college. They're using it fresh out. And they're like, why would I ever want to like take notes and do stuff that's ridiculous?
It's a changing of the guard for sure.
You're going to have a handful of circumstances where the teachers who are doing it an old school way don't have this, whether it be to help them in notes with their principal in their review, with parents who accuse them of something, and not like something terrible, but even just like you're teaching things the wrong way. And you're like, hey, screw you, take a look. This is how I've been teaching things, right? And all of a sudden, the flip won't be, oh, I just love it because it helps me be a more efficient teacher. No, it's like, it makes my life easier from all of the BS. And I think of like how many times did Marlee have to go in and like sit in the classroom and do your once a semester review, and it's super awkward and tense because it's like, however you teach that day is going to be how I record you, versus it can be an ambient thing. And the review can be like, hey, let's look at you over the semester. I see when you're having some issues here. I see. And it's more consultative on like, how can I help you, rather than like, this is what you did wrong in the one class that I audited you of, right? So I actually think the adoption will be, because it helps eliminate friction on the BS side, is where it'll come from, rather than it being like, oh, I'm such a better teacher with it. So that's actually where I see that. And I just think that the adoption is way faster than I thought it was everywhere else. And my last point, I'll get off my soapbox, is we've already seen what this looks like in another industry. 20 years ago, we essentially mandated EHRs, right? Electronic medical records, where your information should flow as you go to different doctors and different employers. And that didn't work because you have 2 or 3 big players who were like, no, I'm not going to work with other ones because they're my competition. We don't actually have that on day one here in education as everything's digitized. You don't have Cerner and, Epic being like, oh, I've got to protect my records business in the way that you do in education. So it'll be a different landscape, but we've already seen what that looks like. And my last piece is, Marlee tells a story about her son who's never used a computer or keyboard. And we have the talk feature to BaxterBot. And he just starts talking to Baxter, and Baxter's talking back. And he's like, this is amazing. I would say, Marlee, imagine you're graduating high school and you've never had to touch a keyboard. And the day someone says, no, in this school, we use keyboards because we don't use AI assistants or listening, you're like, ew, what is this keyboard thing? That's really what it's going to look like, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I mean, it's one of the big shoes to drop for sure, as we get more culturally used to ambient listening and understand that's the case. We kind of have a little bit of a precursor with phones on our, cameras on our phone, right? You can assume that if anything happens that's remotely interesting in the world,
everyone's taking it out.
It's like that's such a weird human behavior. Like that, just like, oh, look, this.
I'm going to stand and watch someone get mugged rather than help them.
Like
right?
The first thing, like when you're getting like a poor old woman's getting mugged, the first thing somebody does isn't say, please stop. They pull out the phone.
Call 911 if your phone is out.
Let me get my million hits. So, I mean, I think the fact that that's the student population today is very used to ambient recording, ambient listening. So I don't think they're going to be the problem or any sort of challenge. They're probably wanting to do it. They probably do it today. Like you said, they probably just click on the phone. But yeah, I do think adoption is going to have to come through just like massive amount of value, and people are just going to have to understand that they're going. What am I getting for this? Like, what am I giving up, and then what am I getting in return? And if the equation, as you mentioned, Ed, is asymmetric and the value is there, yeah, adoption will happen.
Think of the younger generation in the data where they were like, hey, we're going to take away TikTok because they're spying on you. And the younger generation's like, yeah, I know everyone's been spying on me. Every app spies on me. Don't take away TikTok from me. Right. Whereas like you can use that line with people our age and older, like they're going to be spying on you. And you're like, gasp. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You tell like 15 to 25-year-olds, hey, don't use TikTok because the Chinese are spying on you. And you're like, bro, everyone's spying on you. And they would say bro because that's how they talk to their mothers.
They're my biggest followers. Like, of course,
Thanks, TikTok.
Well, this has been... Yeah, exactly. This episode has been sponsored by TikTok. So no, this has been fantastic. And obviously we'd love to, have you guys back on in the future, do a check-in, see how this school year goes. Cause I know you guys have really expanded on your footprint. This is a huge test for BaxterBot. And if I'm pronouncing this correctly, isn't it Pawfessor Bruce? Okay, just
that is
sure.
correct. That is correct.
Just for everyone listening at home, that's there on the shirt. You just can't see it. It's right at the bottom, but it's good stuff.
Up here. Yeah. There it is. Yeah.
There we go. Pawfessor Bruce.
I love it.
Well, yeah, we appreciate you guys coming on, and we would love to have you back. And for everyone listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more content, which will be linked to this episode to continue this discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Welcome to the show, where air takes the floor.